welcome to my cellar. Before we get going here, comment on the weather. It's been weird, hasn't it? I know some of you are just roasting and unseasonably hot. We had a batch of that already, and we'll probably have more here before that's over. And then somebody from Montana wrote me, or I saw something on Facebook about it was 103 degrees in Montana, and 5 months from now it'd be 140 degrees colder, and bears will eat you. Food for thought. All right. Thanks for answering my question about orcs and giants, Tim. I guess telling my DM that my elf now identifies as a dragon won't let me be able to fly and breathe fire. Yeah, I'd say that's probably a good idea. A new question. Do you still have Jeru Ashtaf's character sheet? No. Was the level of abilities scored and listed at the Village of Hamlet accurate? Yeah, as far as I can recall, pretty much so. To be honest, in some of the playtests, we weren't really... I was never really that cognizant of what level they were. I knew what they could do, and that tinkering was done, the finalizing was done entirely by Gary. But it seems fairly accurate. It was playtest. Jeru, all of the characters in that, as we tested, morphed. Stronger, weaker. This do this, can't do that. That's what playtest. That's what extensive playtesting is all about. Is fine tuning. Okay, first, is your new intro video at all influenced by the old television show Mystery Science Theater 3000? Not by me. It looks very similar, which might just be an issue of the technology used, but I thought perhaps there was some influence. Okay, I remember Mystery Theater. I didn't particularly, I probably didn't watch more than a half dozen of them ever. However, my producer may well be a fan. I believe he's mentioned it in the past, so it might. I think it's more reminiscence of the outro on Looney Tunes, but that's just my take on it. Okay. You answered a question from a viewer about unfair encounters, and I think there needs to be some nuance both in the question and your answer. Well, I can't put nuance in a question when it's sent in. I mean, it's up to the writer to nuance it. If an encounter is forced by a DM, then absolutely the DM should not be designing it to wipe out the party. That doesn't mean you can't have an objectively powerful opponent that might require an indirect or well-thought-out approach, but it shouldn't be a simple mismatched bloodbath if it is a forced encounter. I agree. I've used this example more times than I care to think about starting a campaign and being a foolish or a wise player. New campaign. There's livestock, small livestock disappearing over in this part of the Shire. There's been some talk of skulking and prowling and larger livestock, or things missing over there, and there's been rumors that there's been a wyvern seen up in the mountains off to the north. The new party doesn't go, let's go fight the wyvern. No. Okay, but the wyvern's still there. Just as the big bad evil, or whatever the ultimate bad thing is in this adventure, in this dungeon, whatever, it can still be there, forcing the players to fight it before they have a chance to even find out what it is, to plot, to plan, to prepare. That would indeed be egregious. Indeed. but there's nothing that says you can't have it there. It's the forced, oh, too bad, screwed, you're dead, goodbye, in the third room into the dungeon. That's not right. All right, now we're going to go on in this some more. Second, you answered a question from a viewer about unfair encounters. All right, well, that's where we're at. All right. Okay. However, if the DM has an open world, and for example, a party of second level adventurers hears rumors of a dragon and decide they're going to pursue it and relentlessly do so, they've chosen a very dangerous path. Yeah, it's liable to get them killed too. There's no reason for a DM to nerf such an encounter if it's not been forced. I agree. Absolutely agree. It can be there. It can be a goal for later when you're badder, you're bigger, you're more skilled, you've got better weapons. It can always be there in the back of your mind. You're going to go take care of that wyvern. All right. The writer goes on to say, if it's an action of their own free will and it comes out badly, that's it. And absolutely free will. Tim, next time you see Joe, well, that'd be nice. I don't know if I ever will again. You have to tell him playing a dragonborn who worships Tiamat will never be as cool as a human who worships Tiamat. Yeah, well, if I ever get to see Joe again, I'll be sure to try to remember that. Okay, oh yeah, okay. Got to remember, I at the time I'm recording this now, I downloaded these maybe 45 minutes or an hour ago, one right after another, click, cut and paste, and then I just kind of let them all anyway. So, a lot of this is pretty much off the cuff. Party riding in a cart. The magic user takes time riding in a cart to memorize spells. Me, I say no, having grown up on red clay dirt roads, which are better than medieval tracks and roads. What would you say? I'd say no too. Now, I have an exception to that. At a if it's a scenario at a convention, I have violated that. I have had my concept of this is the magic user needs deep, profound REM sleep, then can get up and upon rising and read through his book, and he's got his spells. That's how I deal with it. So, if the party is forced to fort up or they're camping out overnight, 8 hours uninterrupted sleep is full replenishment. Now, that's not such a big deal if you've only got a couple of small spells burned the day before. But if you get no sleep, you don't get anything. If I have had encounters, or I wrote an adventure that hasn't been published, the second part of the Snake Riders, that has a fair percentage chance of stuff happening all night long that will prevent you from getting, decent sleep. In which case, the magic user's screwed if they have a lot of spells to replenish. Now, if they only got one or two, and they only need to, to do one or two, it should be a sliding scale that's fair to both sides. My opinion. Now, in a reply, someone with a much more devious and perverse mind than mine came up with this response. Let him try. 30% chance spell will fizzle. 30% chance that it'll backfire. 30% chance that there'll be a temporary rift in the fabric of space-time. 10% chance the magic user has a giant brain fart, and sits in the next tavern depressed and drunk for 1d6 weeks. Player will then have to consult his stable of characters to see who is available. Well, I admire the ornery and snark that went into this. However, there's no chance whatsoever that it'll work. And no, I would bleed off 3% from each of the fizzle, backfire, rift, and have a 9% chance of it actually going off as planned. There's always, old school, there's always got to be a chance. Anything is possible, no matter how ludicrous. Anything is possible in old school if you make your die roll. Those all-powerful dice. All right. All right, here's a response. Shit, yeah, that D&D movie trailer looks great. Thanks for tipping me off. Enjoy your first Patreon premium. Hope it's a lot of fun. You got to talk us through the photo montage in the end credits of your show. Who all in there who all is in there with you, especially that group photo? Well, that big group photo is a whole bunch of people a few years ago from the East Coast at Total Confusion Con near Boston. And the 360-degree GIF file. Yes, someone was mapping me for a 3D model, but it didn't come out. The mapping wasn't good enough. The equipment wasn't up to snuff. And so good to see the end credits evolving. Well, yeah, I'm trying to get better all the time. Look a little more professional. And we'll talk a little bit more about Patreon at the end, okay? All right. In regard to familiars, our familiars, and this has got a number of, so I'm going to answer some as I go along the way and hold some, and it's a very complex question, but it's okay, because I like this, exploring this. Are familiars best suited to innovative solutions? They can be. Not even being a familiar, if you had a ring of speaking with animals and a bag of mice, you could outfox just about anything going on in a dungeon using those mice as your scouts, and being able to speak with them and relay information. They would be your little itty-bitty little graves lurking in the shadow mice. They would be temporary familiars of a familiar type. Anyway, there are small ways, yes. Let's see. That is. Norvegicus, the rat familiar, climbs up a rusty portcullis and chews through the ropes, thus allowing the PCs to thwart the impediment. Okay. Sure. Use their animal abilities. Absolutely. Use their animal abilities. If you got a crow for a familiar, use their ability to reach down and snatch things and swoop in on pretties and shinies that catch their eye. Sure. Why not? Liked your illustration of Lassie not taking a bullet for Timmy. I can't imagine Lassie doing that even if Timmy was elected president. Although it is a trope of stories where people have strong bonds with an animal, but I take your point. Familiars are not mindless cult members, mortally dedicated to their magic user. Okay, second question. Do familiars' special abilities offer the chance of paradoxically unhelpful quirks? Better put that one into a... find a better way to say that. I like your idea of having a special ability conferred upon the familiar, hopefully giving them extra ways to be helpful. But this notion triggers my trickster DM gene. For example, attacked by an ogre, the wizard's rabbit familiar Hoppy uses his special ability and multiplies filling the room with tribbles on, like tribbles on meth. Their combined weight crushes the yogurt to paste, blocking the party's passage from the room, forcing the PCs back the way they came from before being themselves processed into butter. If so in that circumstance, oh, we got to go back to where we came. Fine, we're not dead. Okay, that's the first thing. The first thing you should always ask, every player character should always ask after anything happens is, am I dead? No. Okay. Continue. If the answer is yes, yeah, the rest is immaterial. Unless you're good at pleading and begging and whinging to get somebody to cure you or whatever. Yeah, if you want to give them a special power, give them a quirk. But, come on, you're the DM, and you're free to do as you wish. Remember that. I like ironic endings, as that would be. Well, yeah, you're alive, but you go back the way you came. Now, how hard is that? If you just came in a door and went down a short passageway, okay, big deal, go find another door. Now, if it means a long, involved trek out of the ruins, well, yeah, that's another story. Okay, here's now. I'll be honest with you here. This is not an area that I ever got into heavily, and in the limited campaign building that I played, and I don't get very much into it in anything that I write, but it is about alignments and what have you. In my Saturday morning AD&D game, Saturday morning, what you have more than one on Saturday? Wow. Anyway, our party raided a temple of a chaotic evil god. During the raid, our druid charmed one of the guards. Now that winter has come to the land, the party is holed up at our fort, and my paladin, oh God, my paladin wants to try to turn the guard from his evil ways. Of course he does. He's a paladin, doesn't know any better. Dudley Do-Right with a sword. What are some constructive ways I can approach the guard to convince him to turn from the path of evil? Well, what I'm about to go into by some people might be considered sacrilegious or profane. I don't know what your belief systems might encompass. Don't care. How would you convert him? Well, you have a charisma score. The NPC needs one. Establish one. Establish the NPC's stats. If he's really, really smart, he's going to be really, really hard to convert. If he's not very smart, or he's not very wise, then have your DM work out a comparative ratio type thing, and pick a number, 5. 5 times you have to achieve this role against his wisdom or intelligence or whatever your DM sets up, or you as a DM sets up. 5 times you have to get him to see the light. And once you do, he's converted. He's shaky. He's a new convert. Could backslide. Now that's one way. If you want to act all this out, you can preach at him. You can read platitudes and beatitudes and all kinds of pious things. and hope that you'll eventually wear down his intelligence, or overcome it, or what, or his wisdom, or and I'm not saying you're going to brainwash him and make him mindless, just that you're going to convince him to change his value set. Oh, pick anyway. Powerful speeches and sermons. Now, there were a couple of answers to this from other viewers. The first one was blunt and to the point. St. Cuthbert has some pretty effective methods. In response to that, by the original poster, Val, apparently that's of course, Prince Valiant, yeah. Anyway, Val would not use St. Cuthbert methods because he believes to be truly good, you must be free to choose good or evil. He started with the truth, saying, hath thy wicked master speaketh of thy true price of service to the demon Dolgoth? Oh Lord, okay, well, this is a speech of some sort, and it's full of stuff I don't want to pronounce. Okay. As the DM, whatever you deem effective, plausible, amusing. As DM, you're entitled to have a few laughs too, Make them have to be baptized, and make them have to wear a pink tutu and green ballet slippers and a ring of berries in their hair and go for full submersion. Whatever. I'm about to start a young player to... all right. I believe this is... I try to get nuance here. Start a young player into D&D. He's going to use 3.5. Oh my God, the edition who should never be named. But if you're having fun with it and that's what you know, that's fine. And it's going to have my best friend play also. I like the old books, but it will give him a good start in the game. How do you start a new player? Well, honestly, truthfully, I would not start him in 3.5. I'd start him in basic, beginner mode, simple stuff, simple adventures. Maybe the first adventure, something patterned on the lines of something familiar, a fairy tale, a story, one of Aesop's fables, something that has a little bit of the familiar to help him step into the new and the unknown. Simple, fun, a little tongue-in-cheek, or a little humorous, because we all like to laugh, and we all really like to laugh with each other and with other people. Make it easy. Something's stealing the sheep, and has to go off and find what's stealing the sheep, and it's a couple of ogres, or a couple of goblins, something that he could defeat either through luck or guile, and set a small goal that's easily achieved. Wow, that was fun, let's do it again. Or set a small goal that in the setting and in the achievement of has a big fat hook with a great big earthworm on the end of it for the next step in the next part of the adventure. That's how I do it. You know the person, I don't. Therefore, you have a much better grasp of the receptibility, the receiving capability of your new player. All right. Now we're going back to doppelgangers and DM egos versus old school DMing. That's the way it's written here. Commenting on the possession of the original doppelganger post 2 shows back, from DM seeking advice on TPKing thick players to a criticism of DMs using overly powerful monsters. If a party is just not picking up what the DM's putting down, how do we address this? Because if that's what's happening, it's not really an issue of the monster the DM chose. You're right. The first thing I'll say is if they're not picking it up, reassess what you're putting down. Remember that you know all the facts. They need a few facts or a few avenues of investigation to pursue. We DMs might be at fault. We're not putting out clear signals. Depending upon how much you enjoy slapping on the paw with a rolled up newspaper, don't let them do something that doesn't have any value to the development of the campaign or of the adventure. Nope, can't do it. We all DMs know that if we have the adventure about 75% done and they're chomping at the bit to play this weekend, okay, sure as hell within half the allotted time they'll be up against the 25% you don't have finished yet. It happens. Give them a left-right turn, and you really want them to go left, they'll go right. It happens. There's nothing you can do about that without becoming much too much like the older editions, where this NPC can't die because he's got to be in the neck. Okay, you can't railroad. It's tough when they aren't picking up. You can introduce an NPC who straightens them out through information that they can glean or whatever. Put an NPC in to guide them along the way. That's one way. Leave bigger breadcrumbs. Don't offer too many choices. Instead of offering 5 choices, offer 3. Okay, going on here. Play is unpredictable. The DM might feel their monster is well compensated for by the clues, items, and opportunities, but PC behavior is unpredictable. Absolutely. PCs will do stupid things. PCs aren't any different than the people playing them. As a rule, people is people, PCs is PCs, and there's always going to be some that are going to do things that seemed like a good idea at the time, but turned out to be really, really stupid. That is a reflection of human nature, isn't it? I got a few scars and memories from, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Let's focus on the problem. A disconnect between the elements the DM is giving in terms of story hooks, clues, etc., and the PC's abilities to play with or understand these elements. Is it a DM ego problem, or is it a problem outcome of the OSR attitude? I don't think DM should have any ego beyond outside of game time. Yeah, I'm proud of that adventure. I wrote a damn good adventure and we had a wonderful time. That should be the extent of the DM's ego. His ego has no place during game hours, during game time. None whatsoever. God knows I've bit my tongue and sucked up the blood more times than I care to think about when I thought I had something really clever and damn it, they figured it out right away. And believe me, that can be annoying to your ego. You thought you did a better job and they saw right through it. Can't have that. Can't let that happen. It is an outcome of the old school loosey-goosey style of play. Yes, a little bit. Are DMs reasonably arbitrary referees in this situation? If PCs fail to check for things, ignore big clues, which the DM feels they are advancing as virtual giveaways, which attitude can a DM adopt to fix this problem? Or should they simply follow the physics, as it were, of the game rules and TPK if required? Yes. To answer this question, I'm going to give you some. It depends on it. Number one, it depends on the cohesiveness and the outside of the game table friendship of the group. If you're all friends and can laugh at mutual misfortune, then let a TPK happen. Or, near TPK. And maybe that'll startle them back into paying more attention, asking more questions, acquiring more information. Especially if, without seeming like you're lecturing, especially if you can explain to them after the horrendous incident all the ways, all the clues, all the different things they could have done, could have perceived, could have tried that might have averted this tragedy. But you don't want to kind of sound like a schoolmarm. I don't want to sound like I'm standing up in front of a junior high English class. Okay, or lit class or history class. The DM's got to swallow his ego. DM feeds his own ego after the game, going, "Man, that was a damn good game," and he can tell himself however much he wants how it was all up to him because of his brilliant game, brilliant writing, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Your players don't know. Because you're not going to sit there, "Yeah, wasn't that great? Boy, I read a great adventure tonight, didn't I, guys?" No, if it was really great, they'll tell you it was. Sometimes you just got to let, as you call it, the physics, sometimes you got to let the yarn unspool. And if it ends up in a TPK or near TPK, that's the way the ball bounces. Your players will either play better next time or there'll be another one later. And if they're still having fun, as long as you're still having fun figuring out neat ways to TPK them. I've got, there's a thing in the Curse of the Weaver Queen that involves something that no playing group has ever been able to resist in any of my playtests, and it seems to be a generalization for players. And they do this thing that they shouldn't do without any precautions, and they unleash something so horrible, it's almost a guaranteed TPK. And they do it again and again and again and again and again. 7 times out of 9. Should I, and now I'm taking this as being, times that I ran it at shows, etc. This is what happened. Now, obviously, the same group of players is going to make the same mistake 7 times out of 9. Do I cease putting stuff in like that? No. because it rewards good play, wise play, smart play, thinking play. And if they're ignoring your clues, check the quality of your clues. Seriously. Maybe perhaps they're just a little too clever. You're not doing your players a disservice if you say a nice way to put this. Treat them as though they're a little younger than they are. You're not doing a disservice. You really aren't. Yes, here we go. In my opinion, it is okay for a DM to abandon their storyline and go in a new direction, to completely change the environment, the as yet unrevealed environment that is, and open up a new storyline, get the PCs out of there and find a better way to have fun together. Absolutely. Turn left and follow the yellow brick road. However, there is a virtue to the OSR way of TPK as long as everyone's having fun. Fun is the arbiter, and that is right. So everybody's having fun. That's fine. Maybe a few years from now, some of you will be sitting around together, haven't seen each other in a while, and you'll have had so much fun. Oh man, remember that time we all got TPK'd by the swamp full of crocodiles? Or whatever. Remember, it doesn't have to be something exotic out of myth and legend to kill PCs. Okay, here we go. Back to the worship of Gandalf. Why doesn't Conan elicit the same twist in the panties as Gandalf? It's funny how players rarely seem to apply level comparisons to him, or am I just being under a rock? No, I think it's a very good point. You have stat blocked Conan in a previous show based on the third 3d6 potentiality. You scored him high in most stats, and from memory above average in all stats, and nobody argued with you. Right, because that was my opinion, and why do you think this is? Maybe it's easier to see that Conan is an exceptional figure in a fiction, a given set of characteristics that make him interesting to an audience, while grounding him in a world where the heightened state is made plausible without eschewing the fact that Conan remains exceptional within the world. Whew. Sounds like you've given this a lot more thought than I have. Maybe the difference between Dr. Tolkien and Mr. Howard's characters comes down to the world they created, where Dr. T produced a Catholic allegory screened through European myth, and Mr. H had a slightly romantic, pseudo-existentialist approach rooted in outdoorsmanship and pulp fiction heroics. It's a brilliant analysis. My guess it really comes down to the cultural value of Dr. T's work, which had such a galvanizing effect upon the public imagination. Dr. T's stuff is maybe just a little more personal to folks, and therefore more panty-twisting because of its popularity, but maybe also its humanity and offer of hope and decency, versus Mr. H's survival of the fittest writ in tooth and claw. What do I think? I think that's a brilliant... I think you spent a whole lot more time thinking about writing this question than I am about how I'm going to answer it. And no offense intended. There's a lot to be said for the settings, and settings set the stage, they set the mood, they set the tone. Tolkien's is in a big world with global issues going on, and the balance between good and evil and whatever. And there's a lot of nobility in it. Howard's work is pulp fiction, great stuff, bursting sinews, huge muscles, willing wenches with ruby red lips, all that pulp stuff. Conan's already super exceptional, extraordinary. Just reading him because he's stronger and more clever and more agile, and he's a this is just going to upset all the woke people. He's a man's man, written at a time when this was the one of the accepted paths of fiction. It was this heroic, muscly, save the damsel, kill the evil sorcerer, and it was a tiny subculture when it was written, because there were only a few little pulp magazines that were publishing this stuff, but it had its fans. So, yeah, your analysis is pretty right on. And yes, I did when I statted him out, because he's a work of pulp fiction. And pulp fiction, they're all big, glistening, bursting with muscles dudes that fought the good fight and tracked down the evil guys and saved ladies in distress. That was the genre back then. Okay. Currently DMing Night Below. Currently DMing Night Below. Must be the name of the adventure. Appears Mr. Carl Sargent didn't share your opinion on mind flares. I'm not sure what that was. I didn't have time to look it up. But if that meant if it put in a punch, I don't know. I'll have to check that out. Or you can tell me. Okay, here we go back on the movie about D&D. My worry about the D&D movie is that if it becomes a success, someone will want to create a D&D cinematic universe out of it. Hollywood is trying to turn everything into a cinematic universe after the success Marvel has seen, even things that don't make any sense. Go figure. Well, it's Hollywood. Land of lost children and strange people. Problem I can see with the D&D cinematic universe is if such a thing should come to pass, every D&D book from that point on will be nothing but a shadow of the movies. A supplement to play this or that character. Adventure modules that take you through the movies. Licensed art of actors' licenses in the books. Ultimately, that would, in my humble opinion, ruin D&D for good. Boy, I'm not sure what you had for supper the night before you went to bed and had this nightmare. I don't share your dark and gloomy vision. Could it found a lot? Any more D&D movies are going to depend on numerous things, chief of which a couple of are the tone of the movies. Is it Indiana Jones, where there's some asides that are humorous and some daring and some dashing and daring do? Or is it going to be something that's more technical and more precise and whatever? If it's the former, I think there could be more of them, because they've got, this is a band of thieves, who are on a mission to steal something. And this is an adventure I wanted to write years and years ago, was a band of thieves setting out to go through a big city to find, to get, should have done it years and years ago, but I didn't. There could be an intrepid band of fighter types or druid types. Oh, hell, a bunch of druid/rangers on you could do all kinds of eco analogies and metaphors, and now think about this. You don't have to have the same 5 that are in this movie in the next movie if they're different characters doing different things, which means you don't have to pay them as much because you're only going to use them for 1 movie or maybe 2 in the end. So they can't, well, I am so-and-so, and without me, the movie will fail. Well, the movie doesn't have so-and-so in it, so it doesn't matter. So it's easier to produce. And there's wild predicaments. And now I'll give you a bad example of success, of unsuccessful and successful. There were some movies back in the 80s. Porky's was the first one, and then there was a second one. And the first one was funny, and the second one was, and then they bombed, and that was that. Well, that doesn't have to be this. And I don't see the franchise setting up so that everything would just be the way you predict here goes absolutely against everything Hasbro has ever done to make money. They know that you're not going to buy a playable version of the movie, or maybe you will. They got the market people that'll figure it out. Whether or not it's a rehash of the movie you just saw, some people will want to have it just so they can do that. It's not necessarily a bad thing. All depends on how well the first movie goes and whether how far their tongue's in their cheek. Because if you're not having fun, you're not doing this right. Right? That's my mantra. Okay. Patreon. Thank you very much, all you Patreon folks. It's a new month. You all know what that means. Last month, the $6 levels got a, what did we do? Oh, they got the unplugged. I did it unplugged. And the $9 levels got the unplugged, and we did a Q&A on the last Saturday of the month, which is when they're going to be from now on. Now, we didn't announce it very soon, and I apologize for that. It will be, and we will send links, because where I was using someone else's Zoom account that I have permission, I've just decided to bite the bullet, and with a couple months of Patreon money, I'll just buy it for a year and have my own channel, and we can handle all this much easier. So we'll be doing that again at the same levels. And I thank you, all of you who have subscribed to it. It's going to enable me to, I've already started upgrading. And then let's see what else. I had some notes here. Oh, and okay. I'm gonna do something I don't often do. I'm gonna talk about something I bought recently at a half-price bookstore. Now, if you got them around, you always got to go in and check, because every once in a while, if your local half-price bookstore has a gamer guy in there, he knows what they're worth, and you won't find too many great deals. If you get a store that doesn't, do like I did and walk in and find a TSR dungeon game for $20 that was in really good shape. I bought a game mainly because it had 26 unique dice in it called Demon Dice. Does anybody know how the hell to play that game? Those are some of the most disorganized rules. There's no clear sequence of play. There's no clear explanation. I'm not sure if you play one die against the other back and forth, or if you line them all up on the table and cancel each other out, or what. I could see why it was in half-price books. And when I bought it for weird dice. So I don't feel I was gypped. 26 dice for $10, that's a pretty good deal. And the game's in pretty good shape. The box is pretty good shape. But, boy, talk about... It seems to be a fairly simple / complex game. Simple, and it uses dice and that, complex in the strategy to implement those dice. And really, really, really shitty rules. Gen Con is going on, even as I'm speaking to you. And I don't miss it. First one was in 74. Last one was Gen Con 50. I really don't miss it because it's gotten so huge, so impersonal, so crowded, and so full of rude people. I go to the cons where those aren't the cases. Friendly people, not so crowded. No rude people, well, very few rude people, but you get my drift. If you're at Gen Con, hope you're having a good time. I'm not going to tell you not to go. You have to make that decision on your own. And now, having exhausted all the things I had to talk about tonight, I'll simply say, Dodata Govi. Oh wait, before I go, there's a project I'm getting involved in. And watch for the Kickstarter. It's a really interesting board game that looks to be thoroughly worked out and tested. And it's much like but more sophisticated than the dungeon game. And there's cards that you find, and there's a QR code worked into the game. And if you have the app and the QR code, I read the cards. Instead of you just picking them up, I give you a little reading of what's on the card. Wasn't my idea, but I love it. And stay tuned here. And as soon as the Kickstarter goes live, I'll be sure and let you know. And now I'll say, for a second time, Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.